I'm not gonna bevel any edges, I'm not gonna skive any edges, I'm not gonna do any of that. You guys already know how to do it. It makes no sense for me to waste your time doing the beveling and skiving, but I'm gonna show you how to cut it out, okay? So first thing, because this slipped off the collar easily, I didn't have to cut it off the collar, so I'm gonna take this down because I can't fit it in here, right? With this material, you guys are required to wear your dust masks and your safety glasses. This Alliplast foam, when you start grinding it and it gets in the air, it will get in your lungs. You will breathe it in, okay? It doesn't matter if you have that ventilation system on, you are going to absorb some of it if you do not wear your dust mask, okay? Don't be surprised if it gets in your eyes, all right? Even if you have safety glasses on, these are tiny little foam particles and they can get in your eyes, okay? We'll get you some eye wash or run it under water. Do not run it under that water, that is dirty water, all right? But we can take you to the bathroom and run underwater, okay?
What do you mean that water is
Yeah. I washed my face there.
Don't do that ever again. That wet water is nasty. It's like yellow.
It's not drinking water.
It's yellow.
Yeah, but it's potable. Like it has to be the same water that goes
No, it
into all the
doesn't.
pipes.
No, it doesn't. When we're cutting this, we're going to cut right inside our staple, all the way down, okay? We're keeping these trim lines as long as possible, because what?
Because you want to always grind.
Yeah, you can always take off, you can't add.
You can always take off, you can't add. That's cool. Wave at them, Anikia. They want to say hi. Please make sure you're grinding through both the polyethylene and the Alliplast. You have to remember that you have that second layer. So just because you get deep enough to grind through the polyethylene doesn't mean you've ground all the way through the Alliplast, okay? So if you're creating plaster dust, you know you've gotten down to the plaster, correct? Okay. So just like your AFO, you're gonna slide this off. Should be a little bit easier. Should be a little bit easier because you don't have, it's not as rigid of a material. So the joint stayed in, which is helpful.
Is it, or are you being sarcastic?
No, it is. It is. All right. So remember what I said about how these articulate? Okay. We're cutting right above where this ends. Okay. Where this little circle is. Right. We're going to cut right above that because this circle is what it articulates around. All right? So, easiest way to cut these out is while they're on your cast. So throw that back on your cast. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut straight across this line and straight across here so that I'm cutting right above where that articulates. Okay, very similar to your tamaracks, right? Right in the center of where your tamarack joint is. The other way you could do that is to put your Oklahoma joints in there, okay? From the opposite side, so from the inside out, you could make a mark where all these holes are and just make sure you're below this one, right? Another way to do it. If you're having trouble visualizing.
So how do we know what the trim lines are for the foot part?
The foot, you're keeping everything high. So wherever your trough was,
Mhm.
you're keeping everything up high.
Okay.
Everything should stay as high and as long as possible, okay? The only thing I'm gonna show you guys right now is how to grind this so that the Oklahoma joints work properly. Then I'm gonna throw the Oklahoma joints in here, okay? So if I were to take this right now, this can't articulate at all, correct? So we have to grind this section down, this proximal section down to where the edge of that joint sits. We also have to grind this down to where the edge of the joint sits so that we can articulate them.
Similar to the tamaracks?
Similar to, exactly. So that's the one thing I will do to show you guys on this, and then I'll throw the joints in, okay? If I take this now, line it up, I can articulate it a little bit, right? Okay, that's all we're looking for. Just enough rounding out. This one could probably go down a little bit further, but just enough rounding out that they'll articulate when I'm ready for it. All right, I'm gonna grab the hardware and then we'll put them in. So you can actually see through the plastic a little bit. Okay. So first hole done, right? I'm gonna throw this one in up here. I might have shorted myself. I shorted myself a little bit. Still. All right, so these Chicago screws are what go on this bottom section, okay? These little brass fixtures go on the proximal section, all right? So that means that my bottom hole has to be big enough for this Chicago screw to go in, which it's not. This drill bit is not quite big enough. Instead of wasting your time, technicians do things efficiently, correct? So I'm not gonna go over there and try to find a drill bit that is just a slight size bigger. I'm gonna put this through here. And I'm gonna wiggle it around until I can get it through, but this might be a stretch. A little further. Come on. Apparently they make stuff that doesn't fit their own stuff. Two Chicago screws, right? So if you're questioning, does the brass go on the bottom or does the Chicago screw on the bottom? You have one hole distally and you have two proximally. You have 4 brass fixtures, okay? And you have 2 Chicago screws. Make the math, all right? So we're gonna throw this Chicago screw in there.
Oh, look, it fits now.
Sure does. All right, Chicago screw goes in there. You tighten it down with an actual screwdriver. That's good. So we're gonna throw this one in there.
That looks good. I can see.
So mine is not lining up properly. Yours will, because you're not going to try to rush through this as quickly as possible. Correct? Okay. Correct. Actually seated in place where it's supposed to. All right, so when you get this done, it'll actually articulate, okay? So if you look, mine is hitting right here. So I would take this apart and I would grind this down a little bit more. I would curve this a little bit more right here, because if you come look closely, for those of you that are standing on the other side, there's a point right here where it hits. Can you see that? This point right here? That's where it hits, and that's where it stops it, okay? So we would want to take that down just a little bit so that it articulates back and forth without that issue. Most they're ever going to do to anybody. They're not going to yank someone back any further. Okay? Now, whoever gets through this process, once you're done, I'm not going to do additional strapping that we need, because you are going to fabricate that. But it is still the same process as your ankle strap, your distal strap, and your proximal strap. Okay? It's still just a strap with a D-ring at the end. It's no different. All right? It's just a longer strap. Okay? You are expected to drill both of the holes. Okay? And you're expected to point the joint in. All right? You will probably have to take this thing apart, grind it down some more, and then put it back together. Do not get frustrated. Where you put in the screws, they don't look janky like mine. Okay? This back section, when lined up, you should not have a huge gap. Do not take a ton of material off the back. You should flatten it on the shoe machine and then bevel it, and that is it. There shouldn't be this big gap here. All right?
And we're beveling both.
Foam cone to bevel the inside of this. You never use Ticra. You never use the silicone cone. None of that for this. Okay? What I can show